All right, hello, welcome. My name is Shaina. I'm an astrologer, and today we are continuing my aspect series. So if you are unfamiliar with the series, I am making a video dedicated to every aspect in astrology. We're getting there. It's a slow move forward, but we will get there, and I will link my full playlist right here. So if you're wondering if I've done any more aspects that you might be interested in, you can check that out. Before we get any further into the video, let me just get some advertising out of the way though. Hey, so I sell birth chart readings on my website, full-length readings at www.shainaemily.com. I sell astrology readings, tarot readings, synastry readings, transit readings, just a bunch of other readings on there. And then I also have an astrology TikTok, which I post very frequently on, almost every day. It's at shaina.emily. I also do lives over there every single Monday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. So if you want to chat with me, hang out with me, get a little mini reading. If the full-length readings are even too hard for you to afford, which I completely understand, that is why I do those mini readings. But it's also just really fun to hang out with you guys and meet you guys and talk to you guys and all that kind of stuff. But as I mentioned, this is a continuation of my aspect series. If you didn't know, I do these videos by request only. So please leave in the comments below any requests that you might have for an aspect that you would like me to make a video about next. And basically, a week or two before I do my next video for my aspect series, I compile the ones that are currently the most requested and I make a poll. So you guys vote on the community tab, and it's been kind of switching back and forth quite a bit. Moon conjunct Lilith wins, Mercury square Saturn wins, so I'm just doing them both. Last week I did Mercury square Saturn, so please make sure to pay attention to the community tab because, as I mentioned, you get an input on which aspect you want me to do. But yes, today we're doing Moon conjunct Lilith. So I have never done an aspect about Lilith. I don't think I've spoken about Lilith on this channel yet, actually. Lilith is an asteroid, or a, point in the sky, I guess we'll say, a fictitious point that I actually do use very frequently, especially in readings, and I find it to be very relevant, but I haven't spoken about it yet. I am eventually going to do videos on a lot of the more prominent asteroids in my Learn Astrology course, which I'll link the full playlist up here, but I've not spoken about Lilith yet. However, I don't like to reference my old channel too much, but I did create a whole series on that old channel, Party Trick Astrology, where we spoke all about Lilith, and we do have an introductory video to Lilith. So because that's not up yet, which when it eventually is up, I'll link it here, but that probably won't be for a long time. So until then, I want there to be some sort of video where you can learn about Lilith if you aren't sure about it. So I will link my sort of like what is Lilith, the difference between the Lilith video from my old channel, Party Trick Astrology, down below if you want to watch that. I will talk a little bit about Lilith, but I do want to preface this with the fact that I pretty much exclusively use the true Lilith. I really don't pay much attention to the mean Lilith in my personal practice, and just in my personal opinion, I find the true Lilith to be a lot more relevant. Basically, in summary, the true Lilith is really where Lilith hangs out, where her actual point is. Where she orbits and how she moves around in the sky is very erratic because she is an erratic energy. That's her whole point. So of course it would be very erratic how she moves around in the sky. So that is the true Lilith. It kind of tracks its actual movement. The mean Lilith basically makes it nicer, makes tracking her nicer and prettier and easier. So I just feel like the mean Lilith is a little bit more constrained. We have a little bit, it's just not as true to Lilith, so you can use the mean Lilith. If you have mean Lilith conjunct the moon, it'll play out probably pretty similarly, but you have I believe you have a little bit more of a harness and control over your mean Lilith, because it is literally a Lilith that is harnessed and controlled to have a nicer movement across the sky. Just so you know, I personally like the true Lilith. It's kind of like the clear, unabashed, unashamed Lilith, which is what she really is. I will also post my aspect video where I talked all about aspects. So if you do not know what a conjunction is, learn about a conjunction first. I would recommend, even if you just skip to that part in the video, I'll link that up here. But basically, let's quickly talk about the Lilith story. So Lilith is the first original woman as far as the Bible goes. It's actually Lilith and Adam. They were both born independently of the same stuff. And basically, Adam was wanting Lilith to be subservient to him. He was like, you should be on the bottom during sex. You should do what I say. You should be subservient to me. And Lilith said, why should I do that? We're born of the same stuff. We're one and the same. Why should I be subservient to you? I'm not going to be on the bottom, and I'm not going to do that. And basically because of that, because of her standing up for herself and speaking her way, and because of how she acted, she was exiled from the Garden of Eden. And she said, fine then, fuck you. If I'm going to be exiled, I don't want you anyways. And she was basically kind of forced to live in exile. There's a lot more to her story, But the main thing is that like she's not going to be subservient to no one. That's like the main gist, right? And if you don't know, Eve was born from Adam's rib, so Eve is a part of Adam, so she is subservient to Adam. And basically, the moon more represents Eve, and Lilith represents Lilith. So this is kind of like if Eve and Lilith came together, this aspect of moon conjunct Lilith. It's kind of the two strong feminine energies talking to each other and how that would play out. So obviously your emotional life has strong ties to the dark feminine energy, because that's what Lilith is, the dark feminine energy in all of us. This is somebody with a strong sexuality. It may not be, you know, unless it's in the first house, this conjunction, or on a, you know, maybe the fifth house, or maybe even the 10th house. For the most part, this is not an extroverted sexual expression, but this is rather a strong sexuality that kind of burns inside of you, right? It's like, it's because it's so close to the moon, it's something that not everybody might know about you. Most of the time, it's something that you kind of hold close to your chest in a very moon-like private way. This can even go really far sometimes, and it can create a nymphomaniac-like personality, but it doesn't have to necessarily. This can kind of also be like a sweet, naive-looking person who is really like a true savage underneath it all. You know, very much lady in the streets, freak in the sheets kind of energy. This person's emotional energy is not superficial. They have a lot of strong emotional wisdom. However, they can unfortunately easily be labeled as crazy, but they are really just horribly misunderstood because there's so much that you don't understand about the story. You know, this is a bitch with a backstory, truly, a strong one. Oh, there's this fucking fly. This is also strong in emotional instinct, because Lilith is all about instinct, that gut feeling, that thing that you have to do, you have to go after. So this is somebody with strong emotional instincts. Their emotions very much are in the moment and present, and they're living very viscerally in an emotional sense at all times. Sorry if you can hear that fly. This can also be very much like devil on your shoulder kind of energy, right? Lilith is kind of like the devil on our shoulder, and with it so close to the moon, it can feel very strong to us. Like there's always this devil on your shoulder saying, oh, do this, make them feel this way, act like this, do that, you know what I mean? And it can be really hard to ignore and not listen to sometimes, because it can be a very emotionally impulsive energy. That's a very good word for it. Emotionally impulsive for sure. I wanted to add a little blip to the summary. So with moon conjunct Lilith, basically you just feel like the way that you express your emotions is wrong. And you feel like you're always exiled and almost like segregated and isolated because of it. I think a lot of people put you as the villain, especially like in emotional situations. And so I think after a while it's like, well, if I'm going to do the time, I might as well do the crime. So it's almost like at first the rhetoric is that you're told you're the villain, or you're villainized, or you're isolated because of the way that you are emotionally. And then after a while it's like, well, I might as well be that person. I might as well do as they say that I am anyways, because I'm going to get called it, so might as well. Which is a really, really tricky spot to be in. And yeah, it sucks. I'm sorry. This also can point to a lot of trauma, which we'll talk about more in a second, but you definitely need to learn how to nurture yourself in healthy and loving ways, rather than kind of in ways of acting out, you know, acting impulsively in a negative way, trying to get revenge, trying to get one up on somebody, trying to heal your trauma through making other people feel how you felt is not going to help you, although it's instinctually sometimes what you want to do. So you hope that people can understand you, but you really need to learn how to properly nurture and love yourself and accept yourself as well. Also, the sign that this conjunction is, because more than likely, especially with Lilith, you need a very close orb, so it has to be a very tight conjunction. So more than likely, this is going to be in the same sign. And whatever that sign is where your addiction lies, right? I even think of like Mike the Situation as a very good example of moon conjunct Lilith. He has moon, Neptune, and Lilith all on top of each other in Sagittarius. And I think this is shown through a lot of his addiction issues that he's struggled with, right? You know, Sagittarius is prone to overdoing things and very much prone to partying, prone to having a very large ego, larger than life personality, just all those things that kind of you see him go through. Mike the Situation from Jersey Shore, all those things, you know, that his kind of plight is very much a moon, Neptune, Lilith in Sagittarius plight. Also, I feel like with the whole idea of fight or flight, with this moon conjunct Lilith aspect, it can feel like you are always forced to fight, right? This is very much an energy that will not flight. Even when you are exiled and you're forced to flight, you will still continue to fight. It's almost like that energy is always engaged and you're always in fight mode. Doesn't mean that you're literally like ha fighting, but it feels like you're always in the middle of a battle, especially an emotional battle. But let's go back, because this is the moon. So we always got to start with like the moon or the sun or something. You know, we're just going to start with childhood, with the mother, with the moon. Let's talk about, obviously your mother had a strong Lilith-like tinge to her. If you look at her chart, I wonder if you would see strong aspects between her Lilith and personal planets, or a prominent Lilith, or even a prominent Pluto, whatever it might be, can be very possible with your mom's chart as well. So this is definitely a very strong-willed mother, okay? Your mother, you might have actually even seen her undergo a sort of exiling. You know, maybe she was exiled from her job, exiled from her relationship, exiled from where she lived, exiled from her family. Whatever it might have been, you might have seen her feeling like she's going through one or many constant exiles. She might have had addiction or obsession issues, always going back to the thing that wasn't good for her, or even the person that wasn't good for her, whatever it might be. You might have even not known your mother. It might have been not your mother that was exiled, but you were exiled from knowing your mom. Or maybe you had a single mother who had to do everything for herself. That's also a very Lilith-like thing. There's a huge theme of needing to be independent, only being able to rely on yourself, only being able to depend on yourself. So you might have had a mom who had to do everything on her own and take care and handle everything herself. A fierce and strong independence. Now, like I said, sometimes that independence can go so strong that she winds up being independent of you, if that makes sense. So you do not know her, you know, that's that independence. This also might be a mom that, if she didn't have that addiction obsession issue with a partner, or maybe she even did in the past, this is also a mom that can be hyper single, right? Because she wants to be hyper independent. She never wants to lean on anybody, never wants to rely on anybody. You might have even never seen her be in a relationship. She might have refused to have been in a relationship. Or I wouldn't even be surprised if this was a mother that was gay and had to fight her way to be gay, or whatever it might have been, you know, or having two moms. That could even be a strong expression of moon conjunct Lilith. Whatever it was, this is a mom that struggles with balance. They're either hyper independent or hyper codependent, and they have trouble finding balance. That's something that Lilith struggles with extraordinarily, is just balance in all forms. Everything is an extreme with Lilith, including emotionally. Your mother's emotions might have been very extreme, to the point where it felt like your life was constantly surrounded by and almost dominated by your mother's strong, domineering emotions. Now, again, everything has multiple lenses to it. It might have been that you had such strong and domineering emotions that your mother's life was kind of at the will of your emotional expression in your emotional life, but it just depends. This is an unconventional mother, though, who stood proud in herself despite all the backlash she received. This is probably a very strong woman, if you do know your mother and she does play a role in your life. This can sometimes, again, go too far. This can go into a selfish mother who maybe only did things for her own personal emotional satisfaction. You know, if this is a mom that has those domineering emotions that took over your life, she might have only acted out of her selfish wants and her selfish needs. You can have real strong, like estranged feelings and themes in your life where you feel very estranged, or your family is very estranged, your mom is very estranged, the women in your family feel very estranged. This is not a mother, I would assume, if she is in your life, this is not a mom you could get away with a lot, though. She had very strong emotional instincts and a very strong intuition. You might have felt like she was a little bit crazy with how paranoid she was about what might happen or how it might happen with you. This could even be a mother that experienced miscarriages or was separated from you for some reason, had to give you up, or she was in and out of your life or something along those lines. She might have had painful pregnancies or something in that nature. I could even see child support or CPS coming into play here, especially like CPS, like, being exiled from your mother might have been an experience that you had due to her addiction or obsessions or her selfish interests. This is also a mom that I could totally see, unfortunately, maybe she had an active addiction while she was pregnant with you. This kind of gives like a Lilith and Cancer tinge to things, if you know about Lilith and Cancer, even if your Lilith isn't in Cancer. But this can be an energy of feeling like you have a bad mom, or even having a bad or more negative view of women because of not having many positive female role models in your life. Or, again, it's kind of one extreme or the other. You either have no positive female role models and, you hate, kind of hate women even, and have a bad view of them, or you grew up with wildly independent female characters that just maybe even completely rejected masculinity entirely to an extreme degree. The sort of burn your bras types of people. You might even be a burn your bra type of person. To summarize it all up, probably for the most part, how you were nurtured was probably not what you actually needed. And you found out from a young age that to be able to get the nurture you needed, you would have to give it to yourself, which is a really hard thing to come to terms with. Okay, now let's talk about rebellion, because rebellion plays a huge part in this aspect. Lilith is, as you can hear from the story, is extraordinarily rebellious. She rebelled against God itself, So this is a strongly emotional, rebellious nature. What you feel always goes against the grain and always makes you feel ousted and isolated and exiled because of what you're feeling. You may feel as though you have to keep your emotions deeply private. And if you don't, then you're for fear if you don't, you'll be ostracized. You really seek true autonomy at any and all costs, but this can be very lonely and very isolating sometimes. This is really somebody who challenges social expectations, and they demand authenticity at any cost. Any cost, literally any cost, to the point that it can even be detrimental to your own emotional needs sometimes, which is so hypocritical of itself. In a good way, if this is harnessed correctly, this can create a super solid and strong sense of self-empowerment, and self-reliance. This is somebody who is an endless seeker of emotional truth and honesty, and you don't want anything less. In a harder way, this is somebody that almost needs emotional chaos to feel alive. This is like an emotional thrill seeker, Like you might be really subconsciously very attracted to drama. You may feel like, oh my God, I don't want drama. It follows me. But also secretly you chase it. Once it comes towards you, it's that itch that you can't help but scratch. Oh, somebody started something with you, I have to finish it. Might be kind of the mentality. You will definitely rebel very strongly against your mother when growing up. You might even really rebel against that strong emotional repression that you felt growing up. Also, in a good way, this can be an energy that stands up for the underdogs and will especially fight for hurt, underprivileged women. You might be a real pioneer in that because maybe of the way you saw your mother being treated, because of how you were treated, because of how you saw women being treated, whatever it might be. Maybe when you're older or you're more mature with this energy, you will really fight for those hurt women. Emotions. So as I kind of mentioned, this is like probably the most strong, potent, emotionally charged aspect energy out there. Like strong, I cannot emphasize this enough, strong feelings that overtake you and overpower you. You might really repress and ignore this sometimes depending on the energy, but it is there. I am here to look you dead in the eye and say it is there. You feel so deeply. You can only feel deeply. Either it's nothing or everything. So yeah, you might go through phases where you really cut yourself off from emotions because when you feel things, it's too much for you to handle. You can't just feel things slightly. It completely overtakes you. Sometimes it's really hard, if not slightly impossible, to harness your emotional impulses. This is extreme rage, extreme sadness, extreme happiness, extreme anger. Nothing comes in neutrality. Everything comes in extremes. This is somebody who can be highly unstable emotionally, if I'm being honest with you. This is somebody who, very unpredictable, very changeable. Many times difficult emotions feel obligated to be suppressed, as I mentioned, but when you suppress these emotions for a long period of time, chances are you probably aren't doing so alone. You're probably doing it with some sort of substance or some sort of addiction to be able to try to harness those difficult emotions and not feel them so much. There's probably some sort of addiction involved in order to calm yourself down and slow your roll. This can be an energy that really struggles to meet others' needs, especially meet others' emotional needs, because you are constantly trying to figure out how to seek your own high and very demanding emotional needs that you can forget and neglect other people's because of that. This can be an emotionally selfish energy, if I'm being honest with you. Now, this doesn't mean you're selfish as far as not, maybe I'm not saying like you don't give people gifts or you're like hoard your money. Well, if it's in Taurus, maybe, but if it's in other energies, that doesn't mean that. It's just talking about, being emotionally nurturing and, being aware of other people's emotions can be very hard because you can be very caught up in your own intense experiences. You might have also felt like you weren't allowed to be emotional or honest growing up, or even feminine. You might have felt like you weren't allowed to be feminine growing up. Like this is what, again, Lilith is what you're exiled from. So you were exiled from feeling like you're allowed to express those moon-like qualities. You felt like maybe everybody else was allowed to be themselves, but you were not. Everybody else was allowed to be emotional and nurturing and share their experiences and express themselves emotionally, but you were not, you know? And so you're not going to just take that though. You're going to rebel against that and say, fuck you, screw you. I'm going to be myself, express myself, and take up space here. And because of that tenacity, you have a strong emotional bravery that is truly unmatched by almost any other aspect. Again, okay, so because of these strong emotions and because of this emotional turbulence, because of these highly self-destructive tendencies, it's really helpful to try to channel this energy through artistic or esoteric endeavors. I would recommend to try to transform these strong emotions into catalysts for positive change rather than vehicles for chaos, which is sometimes what it can go into. This can also point to some mental illness. Mercury conjunct Lilith would more point to this. More dealing with mental illness that has to do with regulating your emotions. Because you have trouble regulating your emotions, that might be the kind of mental illnesses that it points more towards. This can be like even like, I feel like bipolar energy, maybe even like borderline personality disorder. I'm not sure though, but I'm just kind of speculating. This is also an energy that can really subconsciously pick at old wounds. You want to subconsciously, you may want to bring up old wounds, relive them, and relive the same cycles again and again. I think it's because you're trying to constantly get a different outcome, but because it's Lilith, you wind up acting upon the same impulses and getting stuck within the same cycles. And Lilith and the moon together can bring a high level of victimhood, which I will say, I do feel like it's kind of warranted, and I do kind of understand, because it is so hard to have Lilith conjunct a personal planet, especially the moon. And you are put in situations that are very unfair a lot of times. So I understand where that victimhood comes from. Oh, it's kind of like you hold the keys to unlock yourself from the same cycles, but you keep putting yourself in the same cycles again and again, kind of expecting a different result. So just be cautious. Now let's talk about that exiled sort of feeling that comes with Lilith. So this is somebody that can feel exiled from women or places with feminine energy, exiled from your mother or mothering or being nurturing. This can even be somebody that struggles to get pregnant, somebody that deals with a lot of miscarriages, somebody that gets an abortion and regrets it, somebody that has a kid but wishes they got it aborted even. This is somebody that may struggle with being a nurturing figure due to your selfish emotional expression and due to potentially the feeling of being exiled from being nurtured at a young age. If you're a female, you may feel a pressure to have children but really not want them. This is kind of the person that might always hear the rhetoric of, oh, you'll want kids when you're older. Oh, you'll want kids when you're older. And you're like, you're absolutely insane. I won't. And if you don't want kids, you shouldn't have them. So if you're feeling pressure to have kids and you have this aspect, don't. Honestly, I think this aspect would do best being alone and just worrying about themselves. This can be such a determined aspect. It can be so determined, honestly. It can be beautiful. And you can get so much done and you can be so independent. If you want to go your own path, just go your own path. Do not feel obligated to have a child with this energy. And if you're a male, this is somebody that's probably very attracted to that siren-like energy, especially if you're a straight male. Even if you're gay, honestly, you're probably attracted to that siren-like sort of feminine energy, you know, the one that you know is bad for you, but you can't help but go after. And either way, you struggle with balance in relationships for sure. This can be an aspect that makes it really hard to have like a safe place that you call home, you know, because the moon also a lot of times represents where you feel at home, where you feel safe in. So you can feel like you never have this safe space. You can never feel like you're at peace. This also gives me vibes of somebody that really has to go through like a dark night of a soul, the dark night of the soul, whatever that's called, to be able to kind of find a safe space and come out the other side of it, you know? Now let's go into esoterica, the connection that you have to it. So there's a strong connection with the mystical, the unknown, tarot, astrology, psychic, healing, you know, the healing arts, intuition, Reiki, all that kind of stuff. I would say, however, this energy, I would say, is less likely to be a healer and more likely to be positively affected by healings that it receives, if that makes sense. This is more of an energy that needs the healing first. I could see if you're older, you know, then being the person that imparts that healing. But when you're younger, I would recommend seeking out these healings, seeking out these experiences, seeking out these practices. I think you would really respond well to things like Reiki, Reiki energy done to you, you know, crystals even to kind of help with your strong emotions. You do need emotional healing with this energy. And if this seems negative, I'm really sorry, but this is a hard aspect. It can be a beautiful aspect, but your life will look very different to a lot of people's, and your happiness will look very different to a lot of people's. This can be a super strong, like I said, super strong, independent aspect, but it can sometimes take some time to get there. And it can feel tested a lot emotionally. Like, oh, are you going to go back to your old ways? Oh, are you going to go back to your old habits? You know? And I think that things like the healing arts can be really healing for you more than a lot of other energies as well. Because it's kind of like, again, receiving that nurturing, like especially like Reiki or a massage. It's a receiving that nurturing that you never received in a very loving, healing, spiritual way, especially in a non-sexual way. Because again, there can be some emotional sexual trauma that comes with this energy potentially, or you might have felt like you only receive nurturing if you give something of yourself sexually. And so that's why I think something like Reiki or a massage can be very healing, because there's no sexual implications there. It is purely just to help you heal and feel better. There's an ability to tap into the dark, unknown underbelly of the world for sure. You can even have a strong attraction to dark magic, black magic, voodoo dolls, like things of that nature. Those strong, you know, spiritual kundalini awakenings can be a big theme. Even like, you know, having an LSD trip that really awakens you spiritually and emotionally and helps you heal. You might even heal through things like ketamine or LSD or I don't know, things of that nature. I could even see that being something as well. Just be cautious with your use and be smart about it, because again, you can have addictive tendencies. So I would say try to do things in a more positive setting in a way that, you know, won't bring up more trauma or relive those hard cycles. You know, just be really, you have to kind of approach everything a little bit more cautiously than a lot of people, if I'm being honest. You know, things can get dark very easily. And also with Moon conjunct Lilith, honoring nature, I think, would be something that you absolutely love. Lilith spent her whole life exiled in nature for the most part, so connecting with nature can really be something that heals you for sure. Having, you know, some nature things around you, even sometimes just, you know, touch grass. Relationships. I'm going to be honest with you. Especially if you have this energy like in the 7th house and the 8th house and the 5th house, 11th house, 3rd house, maybe even a little bit. Relationships are hard. Relationships are really hard, if not kind of a little bit verging on, I don't want to say impossible, that's not true, but just a step harder than hard. You know, they're on extreme level, honestly. Especially with women, whether you're a male or a female, this is difficult relationships with women. There's lots of themes of jealousy, anger, bitterness, resentment, you know, people doing things that you thought they had the best intentions with you, but they didn't. You might find that you are a very polarizing personality, especially among women. This might not come out right away, but this can come out over time because it's the moon. People will always talk shit about you, unfortunately. People will really gossip about you, lie about you, spread rumors about you. People will be jealous of you with this energy, but you have to realize it does not matter, because you are on your own path and you really have to go your own way, honestly. This is somebody that can struggle to listen to others' emotional input or advice. Like maybe, I wouldn't be surprised if like this video might strike a few people wrong or ruffle quite a few people's feathers. This can be a it's not the same, it's really not, but it's a similar tone to Venus square Pluto. It's very different experiences, but similar tone. I feel like my most disliked video would probably be my Venus square Pluto video, although on the other hand, I feel like it's also one of my most liked in a weird way. And I feel like this aspect video will have a similar polarizing energy. And I think a lot of it is just because you don't want to listen to other people telling you who you are. You don't want to listen to what I have to say about your emotional life, and you don't want to listen to my advice. You know what I mean? It can feel like everyone's out to get you with this energy. But also you have a super strong self-focus that can also make you feel like everything's about you sometimes. There can be a little bit of an emotional self-centeredness. Other people can feel like you kind of forget about them emotionally a little bit, which is why relationships can be very hard. My dog's here, that's who I'm petting, that's what I'm doing. But people can be very strongly envious of you. You might even had a mother that said things like, oh, they're just jealous of you, or kind of like put that sort of intonation or tone in your head. And you kind of might take that to feel as though every bad criticism or every bad feeling that comes towards you is just jealousy. So this can definitely be an energy that struggles with taking criticism, as I've kind of mentioned. You might even comment on this video and say that I'm just jealous of this aspect, and that's fine. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not, who knows? No, just kidding. I feel like a good example of this is Stanley Kubrick. He has moon conjunct Lilith, and I feel like this showed in the way that he really pushed Shelley Duvall to like her extreme emotional limits time and time again, over and over, and he kind of exploited her emotionally and wanted her to almost be this moon conjunct Lilith person, and he probably got some weird thing out of it as well. This is energy that can be a little bit shady, a little bit strategic, and a little bit vengeful when they're hurt, especially emotionally, especially when they feel betrayed. This is not an energy that I would betray. They will not let it go, okay? They will go to very extreme ends, very extreme limits, I will say. This can even, at its worst, be a little bit of homewrecker energy. This could be conscious or unconscious, honestly. You might be like, I didn't mean to be a homewrecker, I didn't even know, or you might be like, yeah, I was, and fuck you. You know, it can kind of go both ways depending, but this can be an energy that subconsciously or consciously kind of destroys somebody that has a happy moon, which is like a safe home, a happy family. You might see that and be mad that they have, and jealous that they have that and you don't, because Lilith is very jealous. She is. Just something to be cautious of and take note of. But let's talk about some advice to close up. So some advice I would say is accept your emotional independence. Don't force connection. Don't force connection with people if it doesn't feel true to you, if it doesn't feel like something you want to do. You probably will go throughout life feeling a lot more lonely and a lot more isolated than others. But trying to force connection where it doesn't work out, doesn't help you at all. You can have such strong emotional independence, and you can live such a strong, independent life that can be a strength rather than a weakness. So see that as a good thing rather than a bad thing. You can use your powers for good. You can really stand up for the hurt women or the hurt feminine energy that you see throughout your life. It's important to do that, though, after you get yourself out of those unhealthy, repetitive cycles you find yourself in. I think the card Temperance is something really important to take into this aspect. You know, Temperance is all about one foot in the water, one foot on the ground, you know, one foot on the emotional side of things, one foot on the rational side of things. It's all about balance. This is an energy that, as I mentioned 1,000 times throughout this video, really struggles with emotional balance. So trying to accept and find that temperance, that in-between place where in between two extremes of yes and no. It's important to try to hear out others' emotions as well as being open and accepting towards others' emotional advice. That doesn't mean that you have to take it. You don't have to take it. You can literally throw it away. You know what I mean? But just try not to get too stuck on your own side of the story and on your own side of viewing things, because sometimes it's not always that one person's wrong and one person's right. Sometimes you guys can both simultaneously be right, and to try to find that truth there, you know, and that I think is the only way to true healing. And the last thing that I will say is that you also need to accept that no one feels like you do. No one has the strong emotional prowess and energy that you have, and can be a strong superpower. But you also have to know that, because they won't understand you. As much as this sounds negative, I hope you're taking it in a positive way. You know, people really won't understand you emotionally, and you can't expect them to, because they don't have this moon conjunct Lilith aspect, unless they do. But for the most part, they probably don't have this moon conjunct aspect, and you kind of need to accept that. But yes, that is my video all about the aspect moon conjunct Lilith. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you have this aspect, maybe it resonated with you in some way. I would love to know what energy you have this aspect in, you know, what sign or what house you have this aspect in, and how it kind of has played out in your life, because obviously the sign that it points to will play out very differently. So I would love to know your experience with this aspect. I always appreciate your guys' comments. I learn a lot from you guys as well. So thank you. Thank you for supporting my channel and for being here. time watching this video. Again, I sell birth chart readings on my website, shainaemily.com. I have an astrology TikTok at shaina.emily, and I have a personal Instagram. But thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to leave your aspect requests in the comment section below. And yeah, that's it. Bye!